There's one thing that will forever change the way you sleep, and it's the softest 100% organic cotton sheets from Woll & Branch. You'll fall asleep faster, wrapped in the most luxurious comfort. You'll never sleep hot again with sheets that feel breathable to sleep in. You'll experience the purest softness on night one and feel your sheets get even softer with every wash. Discover the difference with 15% off your first set of sheets at bollandbranch.com with code CUMULUS. Exclusions apply. See site for details.
Leafs Nation, welcome to another edition of the Leafs Weekender. What's going on? It's your guy, James from Offside, and we are proudly brought to you by our friends at Boxing Rock Brewing Co., the absolute big beer for the big podcast, and that is Offside Hockey Talk. What's going on, Leaf fans? A wild one there in Montreal. Lots of things on the bone to get to this week for the Maple Leafs. You can see the sandwich board right beside me. We will be talking about the week that was, the week that will be, slow starts, and all kinds of different things around the Maple Leafs over the next little bit here. So settle in, grab a cup of your favorite or maybe your favorite adult beverage of choice, and let's break down the week that was for the Toronto Maple Leafs. Hey, last week, if you remember on this show, I said 2-0-1 for the Maple Leafs. Not too shabby. They came out 2-1-0. It's all right. I'll take my wounds and eat some crow, I guess, on that one where they lost, but we did pick up two big victories, and we'll get to those here. But that week that was for the Maple Leafs, a lot of slow starts, which we'll get to, and things that really the Leafs need to start tightening up and figuring out as we move towards the more crucial part of the schedule. And I know it's January. I know we hit the January lull with these Maple Leafs, and there's all kinds of different things that fans start pulling their hair out about. And I'm one of those guys right now with the Toronto Maple Leafs saying, hey, this week that was showed me one thing. We are thin at the center position. I know everyone's clamoring to see Mr. Fraser Minten. For me, I'm also wanting to see what we can get out of Max Domi. Hey, is William Nylander his option? Will Mitch Marner get a shot at center as well? But we do know the trade market is there, and we'll talk about that here just in a little bit. But let's talk about that week that was. The Maple Leafs pick up victories against the New Jersey Devils. They pick up a victory against the Montreal Canadiens, and I'm loving the fact that they did so. The game against New Jersey, for me, a lot of people were upset with the fact the Leafs had to battle back in that game. What was the key words I just used there, though? Battle back. Something that has kind of haunted the Maple Leafs over the past few seasons, whether it's in the playoffs or it's in the regular season. That pushback, that battle back, to get back into a game, the Leafs just aren't there to do it. And against Sheldon Keefe and the New Jersey Devils, the Leafs found a way to continually get back into that game. And then, of course, William Nylander, left alone, goes in on a breakaway and wins it in overtime, solidifying the victory for the Maple Leafs. Loving it. Now, the Montreal Canadiens game, you can't tell me that's how the Leafs drew it up. I still like the fact, down 3-0, they start chipping away. They get the goal from McMahon, from Nye's stick, by the way. They get the goal from Robertson. And then the momentum starts to build. You see the train start to run, get on the tracks, and this team picks it up and keeps it rolling to get the victory against Montreal. But it was a slow start, and that's the concern for me. So let's look at the week ahead here for the Toronto Maple Leafs. We have 3 games on the docket starting on the Amazon trip, and we all love the Amazon broadcast. You can't tell me you don't, because the Maple Leafs on the Amazon broadcast are money in the bank. So we got the Tampa Bay Lightning, the Columbus Blue Jackets, and then the Ottawa Senators Saturday night, big game yet again. And a lot of people whispering in my ear saying, hey, if the Leafs play the Sens as their first round opponent, if they're able to hold the ground they have in the Atlantic and play the Sens first round, they may actually run the Leafs business. And I don't know about that. I always look back and say, hey, when it came to the regular season, or Sens and Leafs, the Sens always won the regular season battle, but it was the playoffs where the Toronto Maple Leafs would always up their game and say, see you later, Ottawa, sending them out of the playoffs. So Saturday night, I'm fired up for that game. Tampa Bay, well, it's a key Atlantic Division opponent. You want to keep getting those points and keeping that gap with Florida. So it's going to be a game, obviously, where Tampa wants to keep gaining points as well. They're in that thick mix with all those other teams that are trying to clamor for either the third spot in the Atlantic or to put themselves in a wild card position. So they obviously want to pad their stats. So it'll be a big game in that regard. And I do think we will see again Joseph Woll between the pipes on Monday night. On Wednesday against the Columbus Blue Jackets, this team is another one of those teams that's in that race right there with the points, trying to get themselves a footing in either one of the wild cards or to chase down one of the top 3 spots in their division. So I'm looking at the fact that the Columbus Blue Jackets are another hungry team, and we know they're very driven, obviously playing for their friend Johnny Gaudreau, and that is something that's driven this team, really putting them, I guess, head and shoulders kind of above the rest on the emotional playing field, and that's really something that the Leafs are going to have to deal with. It is going to be something the Leafs will deal with, of course. You go into Columbus, that is going to be a game, high emotions. I do expect to see a backup goaltender, whether the Leafs call backup Murray or it's Dennis Hildeby that is between the pipes for the blue and white. I do see them starting the backup goaltender on Wednesday night to give Joseph Woll a little bit of a breather. And then we got Saturday night, Battle of Ontario, hockey night in Canada, all eyes on the big game between the Ontario rivals. And yes, we can call it that because when these two teams get together, it is a game that definitely delivers. And one thing I tell John Trottier all the time, I hate the triple train horn when they score the goal, and he makes sure to jam that down my throat when the Maple Leafs start scoring at will. So, the Senators start scoring at will. That horn goes off a few extra more times. So, John, I see you. I know what's coming. But what's been plaguing the Maple Leafs this week, as we look at that week that will be, I'm calling a 2-1 week again. So I went 2-0-1. I'm going 2-1. I'm saying the Maple Leafs are probably going to drop the game against the Ottawa Senators. Regular season matchup between these two teams. Seems like the Sens always come out on top on those ones. So that's where I'm leaving that. I will say the Sens pick up the Saturday night, but the Leafs pick up victories against the Tampa Bay Lightning and the Columbus Blue Jackets. But let's get into the problem that's plagued the Leafs here recently is the first goal given up, but slow starts. Not being in the game, not being engaged. Now, you can look back at the Carolina game and say, well, James, they were engaged in that game. They did score 2 goals. They were ready to go. But the problem was, as soon as they got that comfort level, the complacency kind of set in. They took their foot off the gas, and Carolina ran their show. But it's been that way. They're giving up the first goal. They're spotting a team 3 goals. They are battling back. There is no quit in that room, like Matthews said. But the problem that I have is you shouldn't be behind that 8 ball to begin with. It is an absolute issue, and the Maple Leafs need to sort this out because you cannot be going in against teams now like Tampa or Columbus or even the Ottawa Senators and saying, hey, we can spot them a goal or 2. These are hungry teams that are clamoring for points that are within playoff positions or in them currently, and they do not want to lose that spot. So they will be playing a high up-tempo game, and the Maple Leafs need to come on time, and that's on Craig Berube to get these guys ready and start them up so they're ready to play against these teams. So I'm looking for the slow start to go out the window this week and see what happens. One thing that I did like to see happen, we saw it a lot on his tenure here in Toronto, was Sheldon Keefe storming off the bench at the end of the game when William Nylander scored the overtime winner against the New Jersey Devils to give the Leafs the victory. He just quickly left his players high and dry and headed to the dressing room, not happy about it. Listen, Sheldon Keefe did everything he could for these Toronto Maple Leafs. He couldn't get them over the playoff hurdle. His family still lives in the area. He's a guy that may come back to the Maple Leafs at some point in time, maybe as a coach or maybe as an AGM or a GM if he goes down that road later in his career. Toronto will always hold a special spot in his heart, but it did have a little bit of, oh, that feels good to see the Maple Leafs pick that up and to see him storm off, but not as a Maple Leafs coach, as the New Jersey Devils coach, because it seemed like some of the habits that crept into the Maple Leafs are now creeping in to the New Jersey Devils. And my guy Jim Berger will let me know if I'm right or wrong on that one when he checks out this episode. Listen, the Habs game last night, what can we say? You cannot spot any team a 3-goal lead, let alone a team that has guys like a resurgent on the power play, Patrick Laine, a Cole Caulfield, a Josh Anderson, who's always game to play the Maple Leafs and fired up to score goals against them. You cannot do that, especially in the Bell Center, where they get loud and proud. And you talk about loud goal horns, that's another one right there that really sets the tone for that building and gets everybody hyped up. The things for me in that first period, at least, were just disjointed. It seemed like another one of those games where you couldn't complete a pass. You couldn't figure things out. Woll gave up 3 goals. I know not all of them are his fault, but at the same time, you hope for saves. And boy, howdy, did we get some saves out of Joe Woll, and we'll talk about him a little later on in the show. But the Leafs, on those saves, were able to turn the game back around. And a guy that I really love, and I say this all the time on Twitter, shout out to my guy McCluskey out there, we have Matthew Nyes and Bobby McMahon as kind of a duo of power forwards who the Leafs can throw out there and use with some energy, and they can score some goals. And Bobby McMahon, with Matthew Nyes' stick, by the way, scores himself a goal, gets the Leafs to 3-1. Then we got Nick Robertson, another guy who's really, come leaps and bounds, in my opinion, winning puck battles, winning battles along the board, getting the puck retrieval back, throwing his body around. He's not big, but he's trying to hit and trying to do all the little things to keep himself in this lineup and within the core group, and he's really doing well with that. So he scores that goal, and then the Maple Leafs, well, you know what happened from there. End up scoring the converted touchdown, the Maple Leafs 7-3 over the Habs, but it was a game where they didn't quit. And a lot of people said it turned on its head when Ryan Reaves challenged Arbor Jackeye, and Jackeye shrugged him off and pointed up to the scoreboards. Well, we all know about the hockey gods, right? They giveth, they taketh away. Well, on that night, they took the win away from the Montreal Canadiens and gave it to the Toronto Maple Leafs, because that right there, a little bit of showboating and hot dogging. Everybody's looking for the show between Reaves and Jackeye. At that point, I guess Jackeye thought there's no point fighting. Why give the Maple Leafs any momentum? Why shift anything? Well, it kind of did shift anyways. And again, I go back to also William Nylander earlier this week talking about the 3-game slide and saying, hey, it's a 3-game slide. I don't see what the big deal is. Then came out and backed it up in the New Jersey game, backed it up in the Montreal game. So he really set the tone. Again, the hockey gods upstairs, hey, they must be on William Nylander's side, because he came out, he said the right stuff, walked the walk, talked the talk, so to speak, and got the job done. Now, someone for me who's not getting the job done, and you may want to skip over this part, but for me is Ryan Reaves. I'm sorry to say it. He's admitted himself he has not had a fight this season. Also, not really throwing the body around. It's not the same Ryan Reaves that we saw the tail end of last year, like the last half when he came back from his knee injury. That Ryan Reaves, sign me up for that Ryan Reaves. There was energy, there was the barking, there was the hitting, there was the fighting. Everything you expect out of Ryan Reaves was there. It was right in your face, ready to go, get you excited, fire up the bench, fire up the boys. He was there tail end of last season. This season, I'm not seeing it. And I look back on when we had Wayne Simmons in this lineup, and we talked about Wayne Simmons and said, hey, once he hurt that wrist, he was really ineffective as well. He came back and was not the same guy. The physicality wasn't really there. The fighting wasn't there, but also he was known more for points and being a net front presence kind of guy and all those good things that Wayne Simmons brought, but he was on the tail end of his career, but did not have any of those things going. And they gave the Wayne train a lot of leash and wanted him to work out and fit in with this lineup. I'm wondering if we ran out of leash with Mr. Ryan Reaves. I say this with all due respect. I love Ryan Reaves. I love the energy. Maybe he's still a locker room guy. Maybe still around the team, a la Jake Muzzin when he was hurt. But maybe Reaves just isn't in the lineup and he's just there to help fire up the boys or whatever it is. Maybe he spots in for a game here and there and very few between. But for me, I'm saying that Ryan Reaves has been surpassed. I'd rather see a Nikita Gerbankin. I'd rather see different guys get a shot on that fourth line that brings some moxie, jam, and energy. And I'm not just talking about Connor Dewar. Go and bring me a Steves. Go bring me someone else. Add something to this lineup that Reaves isn't bringing. Because if he's out there and he's not scoring goals, which he's not known for, he's not throwing hits, which he is known for, and fighting, the foot speed isn't there. And does he become just a defensive liability at that point? And when do you pull the plug on it? For me, I'd love to see the Ryan Reaves from the second half of last year reemerge and show himself, but I don't think that's a possibility this year. And I think Ryan Reaves may be on his way out here as a Maple Leaf. Again, maybe a locker room presence, but I don't see him being an everyday NHLer. Maybe I'm wrong, and maybe Craig Berube plays him till the wheels absolutely fall off. But for right now, I'm not seeing Ryan Reaves being that guy. Another guy that is that guy, though, my boy, the Brick Woll, Joe Woll, looking great. I mean, obviously, you don't ever want to say that with spotting your team 3 goals, but he was the reason the Maple Leafs were able to get back on track last night and get themselves the victory against those Montreal Canadiens. Same thing against the New Jersey Devils. Key saves at key times. You hear me say it all the time. It's one thing that I really stress for any goaltender, and the Leafs hadn't had that before. Ilya Samsonov wasn't that guy. Jack Campbell wasn't that guy. Matt Murray wasn't that guy. But I'm seeing it from Joe Woll. Key saves at key times, and his workload is increasing. He still seems to be all right health-wise. We shall see. Anthony Stolarz, he's on the horizon, coming back. But both of those goaltenders, key saves at key times. But right now, Joe Woll is the shining example of you get those saves and you keep the game manageable, what your team can do, especially with guys like Austin Matthews, Mitch Marner, and Willie Nylander, and JT when he's healthy. But for me, you're also getting a little depth scoring there from the Maple Leafs. I love it. Shout out to Pacioretty as well. That ear must have been ringing. But hey, got in the way. But for me, Joe Woll doing everything he can, diving across creases, making huge saves to keep the Maple Leafs where they need to be. Now, speaking of someone that I've talked ill about a lot, don't like his face-off game. Not excited about the player on most nights. But recently, I don't know if someone said, hey, kid, if you don't pick it up, you're not going to be a part of this lineup. You're going back to the AHL. But I've saw something out of Pontus Holmberg I didn't think was there. And that's a little bit more grit, a little bit more juice and jam from this player. He's actually picking it up. He's showing me that, hey, this guy has a little bit more in the tank than we've seen. The speed burst last night, trying to go 1-on-4, draws the penalty, helps the Leafs. Obviously, we know the story there. But doing things like that and actually having that burst of speed, they said it on the broadcast. Wait, that was Holmberg who did that? Another play last night, too, down below, behind the net. He works his way out front by driving the defender with him on his backside and moving towards the front of the net with a power move. Don't see that much out of Holmberg. But the past 3 games, I've really taken notice to his skating ability and the way that he's been able to handle and move the puck really has caught my eye. And if this is the Holmberg that's going to come on here at the second half and really maybe take the Bobby McMahon route of last year and cement himself as a roster player for the Maple Leafs, I'm all for it. But it all has to translate into things. But if you're drawing penalties and creating chances down low, I like that out of a guy like Pontus Holmberg, and I want to give him his flowers for that because, honestly, it makes a whole heck of a lot of sense if that guy can play. He's a cheap contract in your lineup and can do things. I'm in for it. Still got to work on that face-off game, though. I'll never let that go. And then it comes to what do? We obviously see the Maple Leafs are paper thin at center. Matthews looks healthy right now, but we all know something can flare up. And then all of a sudden you don't have him and you don't have John Tavares after the freak injury there at practice, splitting the groin like a wishbone. That's what it looked like to me with Tanev dragging 1 foot one way and his body going the other. Did not look comfortable. I had a little bit of an uncomfortable watch seeing that video. So I look at the Maple Leaf center position and say, okay, trades to me, you trade now. It makes sense. Why? Because if you're doing the trades now, you're augmenting your lineup, but giving those players the time to acclimate to the team, to the city, to the way that Toronto does things, and playing under Craig Berube. Now, a guy that I've been beating the drum for this year, Yanni Gourde. Why do I want Yanni Gourde? Well, he's going to be good on your penalty kill. He's a guy who can come in, play up and down your lineup if you need him to. He can score. He's been in big game situations. He understands his role very well. And he's also a guy who's outspoken about playing the right way and doing the right things. But I want to know from you, Leafs Nation, you're listening to this, drop a comment in this one. Let me know, who do you want the Maple Leafs to pick up? I want to hear about it. Because for me, it looks like a Yanni Gourde. Maybe a Scott Lawton with some term, but maybe if Philly's going to creep themselves towards a playoff spot, you never know what they're thinking over there. Another guy that's been thrown around, Sean Kuraly, another guy who can definitely be your probably fourth line center, but would replace David Kampf, in my opinion, and has a little bit more grit, juice, and jam in his game that could really translate for the Maple Leafs. They need energy players. When you come to the playoffs, you need those energy guys to really grind through things, and Kuraly's another guy who can do that for you. Then you look at defense. We are back to the age-old thing. We need someone to play with Morgan Rielly. And if that's Connor Murphy or someone else that's out there that we haven't thought of to play with Morgan Rielly, we all thought Chris Tanev and Rielly was going to be the pair. It ended up not being the pair for the Toronto Maple Leafs. So you got to find someone to play with Rielly. We're good in net. Most of the rest of the defense seems okay. Myers probably will not play next game. Was stapled to the bench for a little bit. Simone Benoit, definitely going to be a guy that probably comes back in. And then a guy like Steven Lorentz as well. The Leafs obviously want to extend this kid. His stint on the first line, he was so excited. Did not last well. Also got stapled to the bench. But he's definitely good in your bottom six. Definitely good on your fourth line. High energy, hard worker, grinder. Definitely could work for the Maple Leafs long term as a fourth liner option. Cheap kind of deal. 1.75, maybe 2 over a 3-4 year deal. I wouldn't complain about it. If he brings that jam and that play that he plays with and the energy and just the overall positivity and spark and, just brings a little bit of charisma, shall we say, to the Maple Leafs lineup. But I would ship David Kampf off the door yesterday. I still would. When he first got here, it was great. The faceoffs were great on the penalty kill, chipping in on the offense a little bit. But now David Kampf is not that guy to me anymore. And the Leafs have 6 different players who probably could replace him on any night. And we will see a little bit of Fraser Min. But yeah, paper thin down the center is the key here. Maple Leafs definitely need to get a couple of centers in there with NHL experience, a couple of veterans. Maybe you get Yanni Gourde and you get yourself Sean Kuraly. Then you're looking Matthews, JT, Gourde, Kuraly down the middle, or any combination you want to run. But that's the way I think it needs to be done. I'm always a proponent of getting the trades done early so players can fit in, get rolling, and get going and figure things out for the Maple Leafs. Hey, guys, we've been hanging out for a little bit here. This right now is brought to you by our friends over at Boxing Rock Brewing Co. Go give them a follow. Go shout them out. They are absolute beauties for sponsoring the show. Love the Puck Off Lagered Ale. It's the absolute big beer for the big podcast. And speaking of, it is time for the Boxing Rock Bearded Blue Warrior. We used to do this all the time. I got to find one of the beards, toss it on. The beard is weird, but my Boxing Rock Bearded Blue Warrior this week is going to be none other than Chris Tanev. And I got to say, this guy here blocks shots. Nobody has business blocking, whether it's with his body, head, neck, arm, leg, torso. It doesn't matter. He takes the shot, and if it hurts, he goes and shakes it off, walks down the tunnel, and comes back. I don't understand how he does it. I hope it rubs off on some of the younger Leaf defensemen. I'm looking at a Cade Weber saying, hey, that might be the guy to be Tanev light for the Maple Leafs. Just blocking shots is what I hear he does down in the AHL. But for me, he does all those things for the Maple Leafs, blocking all the shots, a steadying force on that blue line. Him and Jake McCabe together have formed a Maple Leaf shutdown pairing that we have not seen in a very long time. And I'm very excited to watch them grow together and play together, as they are both signed now long-term by the Toronto Maple Leafs. So I want to see what they can do. Ladies and gentlemen, the Leafs Weekender is back every Sunday or Monday, depending on what's going on football-wise. We will be dropping the episode here on our channels, whether it's YouTube, Spotify. You go find it. I'll make sure you have the link. But I appreciate everyone's support. We're getting things back online. We're getting things back and rolling. Listen, it's been a little bit of time, but Offside Hockey Talk has always been the place where the Maple Leafs and hockey come to talk.